Welcome to our Lebanon channel. The name of Beirut. The English name Beirut is an early transcription of the Arabic name Beirut. The same name's transcription into French is Beirut, which was sometimes used during Lebanon's French occupation. The Arabic name derives from Phoenician Beirut or Beirut. This was a modification of the Canaanite and Phoenician word Beirut, meaning the wells, in reference to the site's accessible water table. The name is first attested in the 15th century BC, when it was mentioned in 3 Akkadian cuneiform tablets of the Amarna letters sent by King Amenira of Beirut to Amenhotep III or Amenhotep IV of Egypt. Beirut was also mentioned in the Amarna letters from King Ribhadda of Biblos. The Greeks Hellenized the name as Berytos, ancient Greek, which the Romans Latinized as Berytus. When it attained the status of a Roman colony, it was notionally refounded and its official name was amended to Colonia Lulia Augusta Felix Berytus to include its imperial sponsors. Prehistory. Beirut was settled more than 5,000 years ago. And the area had been inhabited for far longer. Several prehistoric archaeological sites have been discovered within the urban area of Beirut, revealing flint tools of sequential periods dating from the Middle Paleolithic and Upper Paleolithic through the Neolithic to the Bronze Age. Beirut I Minute El Hone was listed as the town of Beirut French, Beirutville by Louis Burkhalter and said to be on the beach near the Orient and Bassoul hotels on the Avenue des Français in central Beirut. The site was discovered by Lortet in 1894 and discussed by Godefroy Zumoffen in 1900. The flint industry from the site was described as Mousterian and is held by the Museum of Fine Arts of Lyon. Beirut II el-Khatib was suggested by Burkhalter to have been south of Tariq el-Jadideh, where P. E. Gigues discovered a Copper Age flint industry at around 100 meters (328 feet) above sea level. The site had been built on and destroyed by 1948. Beirut III Fern Esh Shebak, listed as Plateau Tabet, was suggested to have been located on the left bank of the Beirut River. Burkhalter suggested that it was west of the Damascus Road, although this determination has been criticized by Lorraine Copeland. P. E. Gigues discovered a series of Neolithic flint tools on the surface along with the remains of a structure suggested to be a hut circle. Auguste Bergy discussed polished axes that were also found at this site, which has now completely disappeared as a result of construction and urbanization of the area. Beirut IV Fern Esh Shebak, river banks was also on the left bank of the river and on either side of the road leading eastwards from the Fern Esh Shebak police station towards the river that marked the city limits. The area was covered in red sand that represented Quaternary River terraces. The site was found by Jesuit Father Dillensger and published by fellow Jesuits Godefroy Zumoffen, Raoul Describes and Auguste Bergy. Collections from the site were made by Bergy, Describes and another Jesuit, Paul Bevere Lapierre. Many Middle Paleolithic flint tools were found on the surface and in side gullies that drain into the river. They included around 50 varied bifaces accredited to the Acheulean period, some with a lustrous sheen, now held at the Museum of Lebanese Prehistory. Henry Fleisch also found an emeray point amongst material from the site, which has now disappeared beneath buildings. Beirut v. Nar Beirut, Beirut River was discovered by Dillensger and said to be in an orchard of mulberry trees on the left bank of the river, near the river mouth, and to be close to the railway station and bridge to Tripoli. Levallois flints and bones and similar surface material were found amongst brecciated deposits. The area has now been built on. Beirut VI Patriarchate was a site discovered while building on the property of the Lebanese Evangelical School for Girls in the Patriarchate area of Beirut. It was notable for the discovery of a finely styled Canaanine blade javelin suggested to date to the early or middle Neolithic periods of Biblos and which is held in the school library. Beirut VII, the Rivoli Cinema and Biblos Cinema sites near the Burj in the Rue El Arz area, are two sites discovered by Lorraine Copeland and Peter Wescombe in 1964 and examined by Diana Kirkbride and Roger Sidar. One site was behind the parking lot of the Biblos Cinema and showed collapsed walls, pits, floors, charcoal, pottery and flints. The other, overlooking a cliff west of the Rivoli Cinema, was composed of 3 layers resting on limestone bedrock. Fragments of blades and broad flakes were recovered from the first layer of black soil, above which some Bronze Age pottery was recovered in a layer of grey soil. Pieces of Roman pottery and mosaics were found in the upper layer. Middle Bronze Age tombs were found in this area, and the ancient Tell of Beirut is thought to be in the Bouj area. History. See also, Timeline of Beirut. The oldest settlement was on an easily defended island in the river that, however, progressively silted up and joined it to the mainland. Excavations in the downtown area have unearthed layers of Phoenician, Hellenistic, Roman, Byzantine, Arab, Crusader, and Ottoman remains. Phoenician period. Main article, Phoenician port of Beirut. The Phoenician port of Beirut was located between Rue Foch and Rue Allenby on the north coast. The port or harbour was excavated and reported on several years ago and now lies buried under the city. Another suggested port or dry dock was claimed to have been discovered around 1 kilometre (0.62 miles) to the west in 2011 by a team of Lebanese archaeologists from the Directorate General of Antiquities of Lebanese University. Controversy arose on 26 June 2012 when authorization was given by Lebanese Minister of Culture Gabi Layoun for a private company called Venus Towers Real Estate Development Company to destroy the ruins archaeological site BEY 194 in the $500 million construction project of 3 skyscrapers and a garden behind Hotel Monroe in downtown Beirut. 2 later reports by an international committee of archaeologists appointed by Layoun, including Hans Kerver, and an expert report by Ralph Pedersen, a member of the Institute of Nautical Archaeology and now teaching at Marburg in Germany, dismissed the claims that the trenches were a port, on various criteria. The exact function of Site BEY 194 may now never be discovered, and the issue raised heated emotions and led to increased coverage on the subject of Lebanese heritage in the press. Hellenistic period. In 140 BC, the Phoenician city was destroyed by Diodotus Tryphon in his contest with Antiochus VII Sidetes for the throne of the Hellenistic Seleucid monarchy. Laodicea in Phoenicia was built upon the same site on a more conventional Hellenistic plan. Present-day Beirut overlays this ancient one, and little archaeology was carried out until after the end of the Civil War in 1991. The salvage excavations after 1993 have yielded new insights in the layout and history of this Hellenistic period. Public architecture included several areas and buildings. Mid-1 Street century coins from Berytus bear the head of Tyche, goddess of fortune. On the reverse, the city's symbol appears, a dolphin entwines an anchor. This symbol was later taken up by the early printer Aldus Manutius in 15th century Venice. After a state of civil war and decline the Seleucid Empire faced, King Tigranes the Great of the Kingdom of Armenia conquered Beirut and placed it under effective Armenian control. However, after the Battle of Tigranocerta, Armenia forever lost their holdings in Syria and was conquered by Roman general Pompey. Laodicea was conquered by Pompey in 64 BC and the name Berytus was restored to it. The city was assimilated into the Roman Empire, veteran soldiers were sent there, and large building projects were undertaken. Beirut was considered the most Roman city in the eastern provinces of the Roman Empire. Furthermore, the veterans of 2 Roman legions were established in the city of Berytus by Emperor Augustus, the 5th Macedonian and the 3rd Gallic legions. Consequently, the city quickly became fully Romanized. It was one of 4 Roman colonies coloniae in the Syria-Phoenicia region and the only one with full Italian rights ius Italicum, exempting its citizens from imperial taxation. Middle Ages. Beirut was conquered by the Muslims in 635. Prince Arslan bin al-Mundhir founded the Principality of Sin el-Fil in Beirut in 759. From this principality developed the later Principality of Mount Lebanon, which was the basis for the establishment of Greater Lebanon, today's Lebanon. Citation needed. As a trading center of the eastern Mediterranean, Beirut was overshadowed by Acre in modern-day Israel during the Middle Ages. From 1110 to 1291, the town and lordship of Beirut was part of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The city was taken by Saladin in 1187 and recaptured in 1197 by Henry I of Brabant as part of the German Crusade of 1197. John of Ibelin, known as the Old Lord of Beirut, was granted the lordship of the city in 1204. He rebuilt the city after its destruction by the Ayyubids and also built the House of Ibelin Palace in Beirut. Its territory under Claudius reached the Bekaa Valley and included Heliopolis Baalbek. It was the only mostly Latin-speaking area in the Syria-Phoenicia region, because it was settled by Roman colonists who even promoted agriculture in the fertile lands around Yamun. From the 1st century BC, the Bekaa Valley served as a source of grain for the Roman provinces of the Levant and even for Rome itself. In 14 BC, during the reign of Herod the Great, Berytus became a colony. Its law school was widely known. Two of Rome's most famous jurists, Papinian and Ulpian, both natives of Phoenicia, taught there under the Severan emperors. When Justinian assembled his Pandects in the 6th century, a large part of the corpus of laws was derived from these two jurists, and in AD 533 Justinian recognized the school as one of the three official law schools of the empire. After the 551 Beirut earthquake, the students were transferred to Sidon. The post-war salvage excavations since 1993 have yielded new insights in the layout and history of Roman Berytus. Public architecture included several bath complexes, colonnaded streets, a circus and theatre. Residential areas were excavated in the Garden of Forgiveness, Martyrs Square and the Beirut Souks. Ottoman rule. Pine Forest of Beirut, 1914. Under the Ottoman Sultan Selim I, the Ottomans conquered Syria including present-day Lebanon. Beirut was controlled by local Druze emirs throughout the Ottoman period. One of them, Fakhr al-Din II, fortified it early in the 17th century, but the Ottomans reclaimed it in 1763. With the help of Damascus, Beirut successfully broke Acre's monopoly on Syrian maritime trade and for a few years supplanted it as the main trading center in the region. During the succeeding epoch of rebellion against Ottoman hegemony in Acre under Jezar Pasha and Abdullah Pasha, Beirut declined to a small town with a population of about 10,000 and was an object of contention between the Ottomans, the local Druze, and the Mamluks. After Ibrahim Pasha of Egypt captured Acre in 1832, Beirut began its revival. View of Beirut's Grand Serail circa 1930. By the second half of the 19th century, Beirut was developing close commercial and political ties with European imperial powers, particularly France. European interests in Lebanese silk and other export products transformed the city into a major port and commercial center. This boom in cross-regional trade allowed certain groups, such as the Sursok family, to establish trade and manufacturing empires that further strengthened Beirut's position as a key partner in the interests of imperial dynasties. Meanwhile, Ottoman power in the region continued to decline. Sectarian and religious conflicts, power vacuums, and changes in the political dynamics of the region culminated in the 1860 Lebanon conflict. Beirut became a destination for Maronite Christian refugees fleeing from the worst areas of the fighting on Mount Lebanon and in Damascus. This in turn altered the religious composition of Beirut itself, sowing the seeds of future sectarian and religious troubles there and in Greater Lebanon. However, Beirut was able to prosper in the meantime. This was again a product of European intervention, and also a general realization amongst the city's residents that commerce, trade, and prosperity depended on domestic stability. After petitions by the local bourgeois, the governor of Syria Vilayet Mehmed Rashid Pasha authorized the establishment of the Beirut Municipal Council, the first municipality established in the Arab provinces of the empire. The council was elected by an assembly of city notables and played an instrumental role governing the city through the following decades. Vilayet of Beirut. In 1888, Beirut was made capital of a vilayet governorate in Syria, including the Sanjaks prefectures Latakia, Tripoli, Beirut, Acre and Bekaa. By this time, Beirut had grown into a cosmopolitan city and had close links with Europe and the United States. It also became a center of missionary activity that spawned educational institutions, such as the American University of Beirut. Provided with water from a British company and gas from a French one, silk exports to Europe came to dominate the local economy. After French engineers established a modern harbor in 1894 and a rail link across Lebanon to Damascus and Aleppo in 1907, much of the trade was carried by French ships to Marseille. French influence in the area soon exceeded that of any other European power. The 1911 Encyclopaedia Britannica reported a population consisting of 36,000 Muslims, 77,000 Christians, 2,500 Jews, 400 Druze and 4,100 foreigners. At the start of the 20th century, Salim Ali Salam was one of the most prominent figures in Beirut, holding numerous public positions including deputy from Beirut to the Ottoman Parliament and president of the municipality of Beirut. Given his modern way of life, the emergence of Salim Ali Salam as a public figure constituted a transformation in terms of the social development of the city. Capital of Lebanon. St. Nicholas Staircase in Akrophia. Ras Beirut and the Mediterranean Sea. Nightlife scene in Badaro after World War I and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Beirut, along with the rest of Lebanon, was placed under the French Mandate. Lebanon achieved independence in 1943, and Beirut became the capital city. The city remained a regional intellectual capital, becoming a major tourist destination and a banking haven, especially for the Persian Gulf oil boom. This era of relative prosperity ended in 1975 when the Lebanese civil war broke out throughout the country. During most of the war, Beirut was divided between the Muslim west part and the Christian east. The downtown area, previously the home of much of the city's commercial and cultural activity, became a no-man's land known as the Green Line. Many inhabitants fled to other countries. About 60,000 people died in the first 2 years of the war, 1975–1976, and much of the city was devastated. A particularly destructive period was the 1978 Syrian siege of Akrophia, the main Christian district of Beirut. Syrian troops relentlessly shelled the eastern quarter of the city, but Christian militias defeated multiple attempts by Syria's elite forces to capture the strategic area in a 3-month campaign later known as the 100 Days War. Another destructive chapter was the 1982 Lebanon War, during which most of West Beirut was under siege by Israeli troops. In 1983, French and U.S. barracks were bombed, killing 241 American servicemen, 58 French servicemen, 6 civilians and the 2 suicide bombers. Since the end of the war in 1990, the people of Lebanon have been rebuilding Beirut, whose urban agglomeration was mainly constituted during wartime through an anarchic urban development stretching along the littoral corridor and its nearby heights. By the start of the 2006 Israel-Lebanon conflict, the city had somewhat regained its status as a tourist, cultural and intellectual center in the Middle East and as a center for commerce, fashion, and media. The reconstruction of downtown Beirut has been largely driven by Solidere, a development company established in 1994 by Prime Minister Rafik Hariri. The city has hosted both the Asian Club Basketball Championship and the Asian Football Cup, and has hosted the Miss Europe pageant 9 times, 1960–1964, 1999, 2001–2002, and 2016. Rafik Hariri was assassinated in 2005 near the St. George Hotel in Beirut. A month later about 1 million people gathered for an opposition rally in Beirut. The Cedar Revolution was the largest rally in Lebanon's history at that time. The last Syrian troops withdrew from Beirut on 26 April 2005, and the two countries established diplomatic relations on 15 October 2008. During the 2006 Lebanon War, Israeli bombardment caused damage in many parts of Beirut, especially the predominantly Shiite southern suburbs of Beirut. On 12 July 2006, the Operation Truthful Promise carried out by Hezbollah ended with 8 Israeli deaths and 6 injuries. In response, the IDF targeted Hezbollah's main media outlets. There were then artillery raids against targets in southern Lebanon, and the Israeli cabinet held Beirut responsible for the attacks. Then on 13 July 2006 Israel began implementing a naval and air blockade over Lebanon. During this blockade Israel bombed the runways at Beirut International Airport and the major Beirut-Damascus highway in eastern Lebanon. In May 2008, after the government decided to disband Hezbollah's communications network, a decision it later rescinded, violent clashes broke out briefly between government allies and opposition forces, before control of the city was handed over to the Lebanese army. After this a national dialogue conference was held in Doha at the invitation of the Prince of Qatar. The conference agreed to appoint a new president of Lebanon and to establish a new national government involving all the political adversaries. As a result of the Doha Agreement, the opposition's barricades were dismantled and so were the opposition's protest camps in Martyrs Square. On 19 October 2012, a car bomb killed 8 people in the Beirut's neighborhood of Akrophia, including Brigadier General Wissam al-Hassan, chief of the Intelligence Bureau of the Internal Security Forces. In addition, 78 others were wounded in the bombing. It was the largest attack in the capital since 2008. On 27 December 2013, a car bomb exploded in the Central District, killing at least 5 people, including the former Lebanese ambassador to the U.S. Mohammed Chatter, and wounding 71 others. In the 12th of November 2015 Beirut bombings, 2 suicide bombers detonated explosives outside a mosque and inside a bakery, killing 43 people and injuring 200. The Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant immediately claimed responsibility for the attacks. On 4 August 2020, a massive explosion in the port of Beirut resulted in the death of at least 190 people and the wounding of more than 6,000. The cause of the blast is believed to be from government-confiscated and stored ammonium nitrate. As many as 300,000 people have been left homeless by the explosion. Protesters in Lebanon called on the government on 9 August 2020 for the end of the alleged negligence that resulted in the 4 August explosion. On 10 August 2020, as a result of the protests, Prime Minister Hassan Diab announced his resignation. Weeks later, a huge fire erupted in an oil and tire warehouse in the port's duty-free zone, on 10 September 2020. Geography. Pigeon Rock, Rauche. Beirut seen from Spot Satellite. Beirut sits on a peninsula extending westward into the Mediterranean Sea. It is flanked by the Lebanon Mountains and has taken on a triangular shape, largely influenced by its situation between and atop 2 hills, Al-Ashrafi and Al-Musaytiba. The Beirut Governorate occupies 18 square kilometers, 6.9 square miles, and the city's metropolitan area 67 square kilometers, 26 square miles. The coast is rather diverse, with rocky beaches, sandy shores and cliffs situated beside one another. Climate. Beirut has a hot summer Mediterranean climate characterized by mild days and nights, as its coastal location allows temperatures to be moderated by the sea. Autumn and spring are warm, but short. Winter is mild and rainy. Summer is prolonged, hot and muggy. The prevailing wind during the afternoon and evening is from the west onshore, blowing in from the Mediterranean. At night it reverses to offshore, blowing from the land out to sea. The average annual rainfall is 825 mm (32.5 in), with the large majority of it falling from October to April. Much of the autumn and spring rain falls in heavy downpours on a limited number of days, but in winter it is spread more evenly over many days. Summer receives very little rainfall, if any. Snow is rare, except in the mountainous eastern suburbs, where snowfall occurs due to the region's high altitudes. Hail, which can often be heavy, occurs a few times per year, mostly during winter. Thank you for watching. Like, share and subscribe.